Coming up on Whether or Not, we have another jam-packed edition, nature and the news stories, including how Penn State scientists have discovered an interesting snow on a very distant planet. Brian also has your weekend forecast, as well as some changes in the extended forecast. And Jake has a feature on how the weather affects food production right here on campus. That and more, Whether or Not, starts right now. Hello and welcome to this edition of Whether or Not. I'm your host, Juklo.
And I'm your forecaster, Brian Cizek.
Well, Brian, earlier this week we had our first very brief round of frozen precipitation here in State College. We got some sleet.
Right, we saw some ice pellets on Wednesday morning for the first time. All the weather weenies up in the weather center. We're very excited about that. Everyone was out by including myself as well. We were all out by the window looking at it falling.
Now, we had the cooler weather. Is there any hope in the extended forecast for some maybe higher temperatures?
Well, we're in store for a brief warm-up, but then a pattern change going into next week, a bit unsettled as well, and I'll have your details coming up in just a little bit. Hold your horses there.
So typical fall-like weather here in central PA.
Exactly.
Well, we'll get to more on that in just a moment. We'll start it off with Nature in the News. Well, we celebrated Halloween this week. On Halloween weekend in 1948, 24 people in a small Pennsylvania town suddenly died. The week prior began like any other. The 14,000 residents of Donora, Pennsylvania woke up to hazy skies, but they were used to that. For years, the town had been riding high on the economic boom of the steel plant and zinc works. At the time, there were no U.S. laws limiting the amount of toxins a company could release. The week before Halloween, which was on a Sunday that year, the morning haze came and never left. By Wednesday, the little town was filled up with thick air and low visibility. You put your hand out and couldn't see the tips of your fingers, one witness remembers. By that weekend, 26 people had died, mostly the elderly whose poor lung capacity just couldn't handle the toxic air. 2 decades later, in 1970, the Clean Air Act was passed, finally placing regulations on the emissions from industrial sources. A small act of giving back for people like those in Donora who had suffered from poor air quality for so long.
A new analysis of the site where an ancient skull was found reveals that it could have been the earliest known tsunami victim. The roughly 6,000-year-old human skull was discovered in 1929 off the northern coast of Papua New Guinea, but it was not until last week that researchers believed it could be something even more significant, the earliest known victim of a tsunami. The team of scientists went to the site where the skull was found and collected samples from the same sediment layer at a nearby river-cut cliff. After performing a geochemical analysis of the sediment in a lab, they determined that it had been deposited by a tsunami 6,000 years ago, about the same age of the skull. They knew which clues to look for based on analysis from a 1998 tsunami that struck the area, such as fossilized deep-sea organisms. This led them to conclude that, quote, it is most probably a tsunami victim, and he or she is the oldest one that we know.
On October 26th, the City of Philadelphia and the Delaware Valley Green Building Council announced the launch of the Philadelphia 2030 District, a voluntary private initiative to reduce building energy and water use as well as transportation emissions by 50% by the year 2030. The district is currently limited to University City and Center City, where there's large concentration of buildings that tend to be the biggest energy consumers in the city. Although Executive Director Alex Dews says there are plans to expand the area down the road. He says the reason we're focused on the largest buildings is because they're by far the largest energy users, and small changes in large buildings yield really big results. The average commercial building in Philly wastes 30% of its energy, while 60% of carbon emissions are produced by the building sector. Philly is now among 18 cities in the country to commit to this national initiative known as Architecture 2030, with 15 million square feet committed to the pledge.
Scientists right here at Penn State have recently discovered a faraway planet where it literally snows sunscreen. The Penn State researchers made this discovery by focusing NASA's Hubble telescope at Kepler 13ab, one of the hottest known exoplanets. This gas giant is tidally locked with the star that it orbits, meaning that one side always faces the star, where temperatures can reach up to 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. However, the other side is condemned to eternal darkness and it gets extremely cold. It is on this cold, dark side that the scientists discovered that titanium oxide, which is the active ingredient in sunscreen, falls from the sky. They suspect that there are mighty winds that push the titanium oxide from the planet's hot side to the dark, cold side, where it condenses into crystalline flakes that form clouds. With gravity that is over 14 times greater than Earth's, the sunscreen snow is pulled down from the clouds in the upper atmosphere, where it is trapped in the lower atmosphere. So what does all this mean? Well, if you're taking a visit to Kepler 13ab's sunny side, make sure to stop on the dark side to bottle up some snow before you go sunbathing. Hello, I'm Brian Cizek with your Central Pennsylvania forecast, and we're used to those big roller coaster rides for the month of October, but for at least for the month of November, it's going to be more like a kiddie roller coaster ride. I'll show you what I mean in just a second. But first, let's jump into the surface maps, and you can see this cold front extending from Canada down through the United States, and it won't be too terribly strong, but it will be moving through its way on Friday, and we are going to see some mild conditions before that cold front moves through, and it also will bring some clouds as well. And then for your Saturday, this high moves to the north, and that will circulate some easterly flow into our region come Saturday, and that will keep the clouds in our region, and that is before this low starts to move through Saturday into Sunday, and this warm front will be affecting us on Sunday, bringing some rain for your Sunday morning, and then a break, and then some heavier rain comes Sunday night into Monday. But for your Friday, fairly mild for this time of the year, several degrees above the average, getting up to 64 degrees. But we won't be seeing a lot of sunshine as that cold front moves through. It will drop and get fairly chilly on Friday night, dropping down to 37 degrees. And then for your Saturday, not nearly as warm as Sunday, 54 degrees, much closer to the average for this time of the year. Mostly cloudy throughout the day with that easterly flow, and then we'll see that rain move in Saturday night into Sunday morning, getting a little warmer on Sunday until that cold front moves through, bringing some heavier rain on Sunday night. Now, without further ado, let's head out to Jake, who's got a feature on campus dining and the weather.
Today, I'm here in Redifer Commons, which is one of 6 dining facilities here at the Penn State campus. While you might not link Mother Nature and college food, there's so much that brings the two together. More specifically about how weather impacts day-to-day operations across the dining commons. Deliveries, shipments, and even menus are all impacted by what Mother Nature has to bring. How exactly does this work? Let's find out. At first glance, it may seem like all 5 dining commons on campus, plus the hub, aren't affected by Mother Nature. You'd only be partially correct.
Unless it's a torrential downpour, the weather per se doesn't affect us as far as the number of people coming in. Different times of year, though, human nature dictates how we eat and what we eat. You know, if you're heading into summer, you're obviously going to be eating some lighter meats, barbecue stuff, lighter foods as far as healthier salads, stuff like that. When we come to the fall time of year, people tend to want to naturally put on that winter coat, so to speak. So you're going to gear up with your more hearty meals. When you're heading into winter, obviously then, we have a lot of the warm, hot meals. Again, your soups, your big hearty meals, your turkey and stuffing, different meals like that where you're loaded with the carbs and the different things that will help you sustain through the winter.
You can also see these changes in the most unconventional of ways. At the coffee shop, for example, you may see more skim milk and 2% milk during the summer, but more whole milk during the winter.
Students get ready for spring. You know, they want to have their spring bodies, so to speak, so they start loading up and doing away with the brownies and the other comfort foods and getting towards healthier foods. that prepare them for summer, what they were looking for in the summer.
Scott not only manages the kitchens and dining area downstairs, but also Louis, the convenience store, upstairs. Louis, too, is not immune from being impacted by the weather.
You would think rainier days, nothing to do, but a lot of people don't like to get out and run around in the rain, especially if it's a harder rain during the day. So that affects foot traffic and different things coming in and out of the stores. So sometimes the stores will be a lot slower than expected. Every once in a while, depending on location, again, with a large population, that they can get there close, then it will affect them in a positive way. Snowstorms the same way. Snow affects different people that don't want to drive or chance going out, so they might only go to the store, and they're not going to head to their restaurants or their favorite stops that they might head to on a normal day.
Scott also tells me that even weeks ahead of time, the managers, the cooks, and even delivery personnel look at the weather to see how operations will be impacted.
Weather is also a major factor in our ordering process. Different growing seasons, different times of year, you have dry seasons or whatever. You can get into where product isn't good quality, which affects the way we order, the amounts we order, or the different types we order. A good example of that is your tomatoes. As they grow across the growing regions, you might be getting them from one area where the growing season is ending, and in the next growing region, the season hasn't fully got into full bloom yet, so you have a gap where tomato prices will go out of the roof. So then you have to adjust your menus or your ordering according based on what's available and the quality that's available.
Though none of Penn State's dining facilities have an on-staff meteorologist as of yet, they know weather forecasting is paramount to operations because college students' appetites don't care about weather. And there you have it. So the next time you're getting your latte at the coffee shop and there's no whole milk but plenty of skim milk, remember, don't blame the guys behind the counter. Blame Mother Nature. For whether or not, I'm Jake Langedyk. Now, if you'll excuse me, time to work.
Hello, I am back for your extended forecast, and will remain fairly mild for the next few days, but before temperatures drop fairly significantly come next week. But first, let's jump into the weekend recap. Friday, fairly mild, 64 degrees, several degrees above the average for this time of the year. And then Saturday, getting cooler, highs in just the mid-50s, and we'll see some showers later in the day as that warm front approaches. And then Sunday, starting off with some rain in the morning, a little bit of a break, and then some more heavier rain Sunday night into Monday. And then Monday will be probably the last mild day for quite a while, with temperatures getting up into the low to mid-60s. But then come Tuesday, temperatures really crash down and will remain below the average, only in the 40s. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and a chance of rain every day. So we're in a very cool and unsettled pattern heading into next week.
Well, Brian, looks like we'll have some more wet weather in the extended forecast. Also cooling it back down. I guess that just sort of comes with the package known as November here in central PA.
Yes, you're right, Addis. As we get later and later into the fall, these types of weather patterns become more expected, unfortunately.
Yes, and while I won't be looking forward to the rain, I will be looking forward to turning those clocks back 1 hour Saturday night and gaining that 1 hour of sleep, right, Brian?
Yes, I'm also looking forward to turning those clocks back.
Very nice. Well, of course, daylight saving time is not just restricted to the United States. We asked you earlier, what was the first country in the world to adopt daylight saving time? Was it A, the United Kingdom, B, Germany, C, Australia, or D, the United States? If you guess B, Germany, you will be correct. Germany first started using daylight saving time in the year 1916 as a way to conserve fuel needed to produce electrical power during World War I.
And here in the United States, Addis, we started using daylight saving time during World War II, which was called wartime. It was inconsistently used for the next several decades until 1974, where President Richard Nixon signed the Emergency Daylight Saving Time Conservation Act. And actually, believe it or not, Arizona and Hawaii are exceptions. They don't use daylight saving time, so I don't know what they do over there.
I guess you could consider them leaders and not followers.
That is true, for sure.
Well, even though we'll be starting to get darker early now, I will at least appreciate the earlier daylight when we wake up, at least for the time being.
That is true. When we step outside after class, though, it'll probably be dark, so that won't be great.
Right, right. Well, that is all that we have for this edition of Whether or Not. I'm your host, Juklo.
And I'm your forecaster, Brian Cizek.
Thanks for watching, and have a great weekend, everybody.